Exactly.
Even if they think they know what they want to do, they probably don't.
Yeah. So I think
it's just like how I always thought I wanted to be an engineer or learn to be an engineer, and then when I actually get there, it's like not really.
Yeah.
This is Andrian.
And this is Ray. Welcome to the Talk Live podcast.
Every 2 weeks, we'll invite a new guest and
In every session, we'll dig into their life, relationships, and perspectives.
one question at a time.
Let's
talk la! Yay.
Welcome to the Talk La podcast. This is your host, Ray. And I think today we're very lucky to have Han Jun and Evan. So these two are like my, OG buddies back in Malaysia since secondary school, and Evan all the way since primary school. And why I decided to take them on to this episode is because, they are now actually working in a family business. And I think it's a lot of people's that have family business, they also struggle. Do they want to work in a corporate life, going back to family business, that struggles and stuff. So I think today is going to be very, very casual, very laid back. Gonna be the first time that we're gonna cover two guests and one host. Yeah, so it's also gonna be like FYI, like probably a very, very expensive episode because Han Jun, Evan, they both taking leave. So really, really appreciate your time, to cover. Yeah, so why don't let's kick things off by doing a self intros. Maybe Evan, you can start with, then we can go to Han Jun. Just briefly introduce yourself, where you're coming from, what kind of industry you're in, and then after that, we can bounce off some interesting, juicy stories on, what actually made you guys step into the world of family business.
Okay, thanks Ray.
Yeah, you can call me Ray, Wenjie. Yeah, so just to give some backstory, right? Yeah.
Don't know what to call him.
Yeah, basically, there was a point in time where I was called like Wenjie for a longest time. So that's actually my passport name, the given name. But the moment I went to Singapore, because all the international school teachers, they had a hard time when I say Wenjie. They're like, Wenjie. So I was like, just call me Ray lah. Yeah, because Ray is like short form for Reynard. And Reynard was like the name my parents gave to me. So ever since, Singapore onwards, all my friends sort of knew me as Ray. But you guys the OGs, right?
Yeah, we'll stick with
Let's
Wenjie.
stick to the OG.
Yeah,
then.
so you guys can call me Wenjie.
OG.
Yeah, you guys can call me Wenjie. Yeah, okay, let's start things off. Yeah, back to on track to, Evan. Yeah.
Thanks Wenjie. Thanks for having us. My name's Evan. I have been working in the family business for about coming to 7 years now. Did my undergrad in Vancouver in Canada. Studied economics and psychology. So I've come back and now I'm taken over the business development and operations team. So we are very focused in managed security services, managed IT services. We help many enterprise customers in managing cyber attacks, cyber threats, doing incident response. So that's on a high level what we do. And I have about 6 to 7 people in my business development team that are under me, focusing in few key areas. Then on top of that, about 5 to 6 technical people under the pre-sales and project management team. So they will be our technical support who also report to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think we'll definitely deep dive more into the different aspects, but let's just give the audience some context on Han Jun. Yeah. So Han Jun, can you briefly give a quick introduction of yourself, what you do, which industry you're in, and then we can dive all things, how you guys step into this world of family business.
All right, sure. Thanks, Wenjie. And so I'm Han Jun, and I've known Wenjie for, I think, should be 16 years now. I think should be 16 years already. And it's quite a long time when you think about it. It's definitely more than half our lives. So so a little bit about myself. I'm in the our company is in the industrial filtration equipment supplier. So we supply to engineering companies that set up refineries or just any sort of plants which require solid liquid filtration equipment. I've been in the family business for about 2 years now, so a lot less than what Evan has been, because my personal journey was a little bit different. I was exploring a little bit different things before joining the family business, which I'm sure we'll cover later. But yeah, I did mechanical engineering in University of Bath, UK. At the time, it was a very interesting time because I had to struggle a little bit with like what is it that I wanted to do in the future. I know eventually I would probably have to join the family business. So there was a little bit of I would say uncertain times. But eventually I did join, and so that's how we are here today to share with you a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so I think we thanks Evan and Han Jun for sharing the context on what you guys are doing today. But I think it's just to give an oversimplistic summary. I think you guys but just to summarize so that everyone's on track. Like, so Evan, you're really more in the IT space, manage service, and specifically for cybersecurity, right?
Yep.
And for Han Jun is really more on the engineering side of
manufacturing,
things, right? Manufacturing and things. Yeah. So let's because in part 2 we can deep dive into more details on the family dynamics and how the relationship that you work with your family, like how's that different, the struggles and all. So, but I think for this particular episode, I think let's cover more on the thought process, because each and every one of you, like you guys are I'm sure you guys have evaluated a lot of different potential routes that you wanted to take, right? How did you guys step into in the end? Like I was particularly curious when Han Jun said, okay, there was a lot of different considerations and thoughts before you actually ended up. You knew that you will eventually be part of the family business, but what was the thought process that led you to where you are? Yeah, let's start off with you first, and then because I know Han Jun, just some backstory, like he tried a lot of different things and some of them were pretty fun, right? Like Han Jun was like a KOL, right? Like you did like YouTube for 1 year at one point. And then so just share from an engineer background, what do you do and what's your thought process going
So
to?
I'll start at the very beginning. So I mean, growing up, I knew that my father was an engineer. About that was the extent to which I know of like the business. Of course, growing up, you wouldn't really care or think so much about what your family is doing to earn money and all that kind of thing. I just knew, okay, my dad's an engineer. I wanted to try and be an engineer as well. So all the while since young, I've always like, okay, I'm gonna go on this engineering route. Perhaps maybe help out my dad. Do what he does, And so I mean, growing up, I never really thought too much about it. I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna do that. And studies weren't really ever a problem for me.
Yeah, you're a smart guy lah.
Wow,
Straight
the
A's and everything. Han Jun's
So-
kind of annoying kid that basically not annoying, like inspirational, right?
I wouldn't say inspiration.
Han Jun didn't really have to work too hard lah, I would say. Like
Okay
he has very solid understanding,
Naturally
which we really
gifted,
admired, right?
He was naturally gifted.
As
No,
his
no,
peer,
no.
right? We really admire.
You don't have to.
Anyways, So that's a bit
So-
of background about Han Jun. So continue on.
So I never really had a long, deep, and sort of thought process, I suppose, growing up on like what I really, really, truly wanted to do. So when I eventually got into university doing engineering, and a little bit into my 3rd or 4th year, I was exploring, because that was a time when we actually could do like more electives. Instead of just the standard maths, design, all those things that you would do as a normal mechanical engineer. And so I actually did a course on business. And during that time, of course, they taught a lot about marketing and sales and all the other things that you would consider doing like in a business setting. And it was I would say it's quite a life-changing course, because it really got me thinking about what I really wanted to do after graduating. And it was at that time that I was also I'm quite I enjoy playing games a lot, and I enjoy consuming internet content, videos, streams, and all that kind of thing. So it was during that time that I sort of thought that I wanted to try streaming and creating video content for games and things like that. And so, and when I said just now earlier that like it was very uncertain because like I knew eventually I would come back and take on some form of role. I mean, nobody in my family really talked about it, like sort of you have to. They didn't really force me into it. But I know growing up and the conversations that we have, there was like a little bit at the back of my mind that like, okay, there's a certain expectation that I would join eventually lah, regardless of what
Whether they talk about it or not, you end up there lah, right?
I'll end up there lah. And so at the time, I decided, okay, why not? I'll give it a try. I studied in UK. I did have a choice to try to look for a job in UK, maybe something engineering related. But throughout the course, my 4-year course, it gradually dawned on me that like the real nitty-gritty engineering stuff wasn't really for me. Despite I was able to cope, doing the subjects were fine, but it wasn't really what I was truly passionate about lah. Like at least the actual engineering, okay, the science and all that. And so yeah, I did like Wenjie was saying, I did about 2 years of YouTube and Twitch gaming related streams and videos before I actually worked for about 1.5 years in the HVAC industry, and then I joined my family business about 2 years ago.
And yeah, it was quite interesting route, right? You already knew like there was a deadline. You knew that you were gonna go in your family business, but in the end, you still kind of explored, your dreams and aspirations, like streaming, video content.
Yeah.
And even after that, like I'm sure your parents, did they throughout the process were giving you a deadline or something, or you gave yourself a deadline? If that could take off, then you continue doing that full time.
I gave myself a deadline. I wouldn't really say a deadline, more like a trial period. I know one year was maybe a little bit too short. I was going for something around 1.5 to 2 years of just exploring. I mean, to give it a fair shot lah. To give it a fair shot, as I'm sure a lot of you may know, like doing things like YouTube and things where you need to gather an audience. Things like even like a podcast like today, it requires a lot of effort to really build that viewership,
an audience, right?
An
audience, the community, right?
Yeah, and the community, exactly, a community as well. And so I learned a lot. I wouldn't say it was totally a wasted effort. It was a good experience. Certainly helpful when you are trying to run your own business in the future
and
as
coming
well.
on future
it's
podcasts, right?
Quite similar. You have to think of it as like a business, especially if you wanna,
do it full time.
Do it full time,
exactly.
Make it work. Basically,
and I think I really admire, like you really went all in to YouTube. You're streaming. I think we were all supportive, right? Subscribe.
Definitely.
Han Jun was a man. Like not only good at studies, good at games, really technical, and also like good in YouTube.
I was like thankful that my parents were at least supportive
right?
of me trying something out, and certainly they were looking to having me explore other options before eventually helping them.
I think parent support is important, right? I think we can dive into Evan soon, but parent support is really important, right? Because you live with them, the upbringing is from them, your values, your thought process, a lot of times it's like influenced by them, right?
Yeah.
And even though like intrinsically they really want you to be part of the family business, but they're like, you go lah, you try different things lah. So I think that was very, very nice of them, right? To let you try different things before you come in.
Yeah, especially because like if they are the ones that formed the business, like it's not their parents that formed it. It is them themselves that started the company, built it up from scratch. Certainly, they want or feel like they would want a certain continuity, eventually. I mean, especially I think for family businesses where you would have like this person and their brothers and sisters or whatnot that are that formed the company in the first place, and then when you come to the second generation and they're like looking at me and cousins, like maybe you guys might want to look into continuing what we started.
Yeah, yeah.
Those kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. But after the YouTube thing, you went into Daikin, right? Like not directly into the family business. Was there like a reason for that? Yeah.
Yes, there is a reason. Basically, my parents kind of encouraged me to try other
Engineering companies first.
It didn't have to be engineering companies.
Okay.
I also applied to EY, for example, for their graduate program and just other things, because at that point I was still technically a fresh grad, even though I graduated.
Right? Yeah.
I've already graduated for 2 years. It would there's basically in my CV a 2-year gap because I did YouTube and Twitch. I mean, I did put it in my CV, but it's something that maybe a little bit of to some employers, a little bit of like a black mark lah, because why is there 2 years missing, but they still encourage me to try working for others, not just for my own to build my own achievements and successes in other companies, but also to build the experience and also to explore, because every company works differently, big, small, large multinationals all work differently, and so it's good to see what others are doing and whether if we can learn some things and apply it in your own company, that's part of it. But yeah, it was also an interesting experience.
That's cool. Yeah, I think very wise. Like I think it depends on different people, right? But I think your parents were wise enough that if you join a family business, you have your whole life to really devote and develop into it.
Pretty much.
So why don't explore other best practices from different corporates, from your YouTube learning, doing that full time. Yeah, just explore different things first, and then when you're ready, I don't think they sort of gave you a hard deadline. Or you need. No. Eventually, they say, okay, you're encouraged to join, but they were like, okay, why don't you try different buckets of different things, and then learn and slowly identify what you really like and stuff, and eventually you can take your learnings and eventually see what kind of new perspective that you can bring in to the business that they've built. So that was in fact I think they kind of wanted me to explore a little bit more before joining them, but because of certain circumstances, like some projects and stuff like that they wanted me involved, and that's how I actually joined earlier than expected. Very cool.
Yeah.
So thanks Han Jun for the sharing, right? Let's jump into Evan, right? Yeah. So how did you embark into this world of cybersecurity, managed services? Yeah, it all sounds very, very techy, but I know your background was like in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And then you probably worked somewhere first, right? Before, or like you went
No,
first?
I actually went straight into the family business, a bit different from Han Jun.
Yep.
Same thing. I mean, I really didn't know exactly what we were doing. I always knew we were in IT. I always knew my dad was a businessman.
Yep.
So I also wanted to be a businessman. Didn't know what that meant. But I've always been interested in business. Then when I went to Canada, that really opened my eyes as well, and gave me a different perspective of the working world, working cultures. I've done a couple of internships here and there around in Canada that time, but not too long. Nothing.
Did banks, right? Like research.
I did some research roles.
You were doing economics, I remember.
I did some research role. I did some sales roles as well, but very short term. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And similar like Han Jun, it's not something that my parents really encouraged. They never forced me to join the family business, but they also never said not to join the family business.
It's kind of like implied lah.
Yeah, it's implied. It's like they will encourage me, like eventually the business will you'll come and join the business.
So they were seeding lah.
Yes, in a way they were seeding it, but they never forced us to do it in a sense. So part of my thought process at the time, I did have the option to stay in Canada and find some jobs. I was actually actively looking when I first graduated, and I remember my parents actually came after my graduation, and we sat down and we had a chat, and I think that's what really drove me personally to actually come back, because we had a very heart-to-heart talk, which I hardly have with my dad, right? And he shared about, of course, we also know about it, but when he spoke about it openly with me, the hardships that he really went through as well to build the business. And of course, my dad's a bit older, so he didn't have anyone to really mentor at the moment to take over. So when he shared that with me, I think that really sort of sealed my decision to come back to Malaysia to work in the family business. And of course, it wasn't easy. At the start, there was a lot of learning. I think Han Jun had some experience working outside. He knew how the working experience was, working with other people. I only knew how my company functioned, and of course, really to understand where we were at in terms on the processes, in terms on everything. Basically, our team, the people. It did take quite a lot of learning. And of course, from the business perspective, I had to do a lot of self-learning as well, right? I'm by no means technical at all, and the products that we are providing to clients are highly technical. So that was also another area that I really had to dig deep to learn up and sort of educate myself.
Yeah, I think I just want to touch on and maybe comment, bounce off some ideas, right? Like, it's at the end of the day, like, sometimes there's different ways that sort of shape you to make that decision. And it's interesting to hear, like, okay, it's like straight off graduation, your parents came, and then you really have like a heart-to-heart talk deep down about that. I think they've probably were planning for this talk for a while already. And that's probably the right time. Like, okay, you've already tried different internships in Canada and stuff, but they say, okay, probably that's the right time. And I'm sure, like, okay, given that you guys don't really talk so much at that level, I'm sure now there's more and it's more natural, right? When you're older, right? But at that point in time, that's probably like the first. And just by, I think you also, like, both of you are like good sons and everything, right? So when your parents, really open up and be very vulnerable about the things that they went through and what they actually see, whether they did demand in the market, the potential and stuff, then that sort of have shaped, like, okay, like what you say, like seal the deal, right? Yeah. So I think maybe going off a tangent a bit is not really applying to just family business and this context. Like, it could be applied to a lot of different other scenarios. Just to give like another, it's not to me, but a personal example that I think like most people can relate, right? Because I think my brother, like my dad's a doctor, right? Yeah. So my brother really wanted to be a doctor for a long time. So all his education, he was studying very science-based subjects and all. But the moment, I think after IB, when he started to apply different things, then that's when, my dad had a heart-to-heart talk. It's like, hey, if you do medicine, it's going to be, if you just do it for like the degree, for the fame, it's not an easy journey. So they actually paint the journey that they went through. It's because like he's really passionate about it, and he always want to learn. If it's an industry that, oh, you're gonna be rich and stuff, that probably not. So he paint like a very clear picture. So that really shook my brother lah. Especially like for him, it's like, oh, then he really had to think through deeply about what he wanted. Like, so not really being a doctor because my dad's a doctor, that kind of pressure. So all that's out is really like what he wanted to do. So I think this kind of like, I think when it's always beneficial, like when you're open up to your parents open up to you. But I think for the listeners out there, right, I think we are more on the child side, right? So I think we all have our responsibilities to slowly, have a deeper connection with parents. And I think life is just more meaningful,
10, 20 years later, we'll be parents.
Exactly. So, and you never know like what kind of like decisions that you make in shape. Then you just know like, okay, not just for yourself, for the family. And because family is a big part, right? And then, which leads to the point, like I also wanted to jump in, like fulfillment, right? Because this is like, you feel like there's a responsibility. This is a family business. But I'm sure like you, Evan, you and Han Jun, you guys went to abroad to study, right? You sure have different perspective of different things. So But like the family business is already built, right? So how did you link, your fulfillment to the family business? And yeah, can you share some thoughts on that? Like, having that motivation to continue it and grow it to the next level. But let's say like cybersecurity, right? Is that something like you deeply passionate about, like growing up? Probably not, right? But how did you internalize it to make it work? So that's would like to understand more.
I think that's a pretty good question, and something that I also struggled with for a number of the early years when I first started, right? Because it was definitely not something that I was passionate in at all. And at that time, I think I was still trying to find my foot in the corporate world, trying to understand where's my place. And I think something that really helped me was the support from different. I had the privilege of having different like mentors. No, I wouldn't say mentors, but people in the field, experts. My dad's friends, customers. They were willing to talk to me, sort of educate me, guide me, and through those experiences, I was able to learn and see how our business actually helps different companies and different enterprises. And I think that's where I started to, you use the word fulfillment. I think that's where I truly saw, okay, this is something that I really want to do, because it's not like, it's not just, I'm privileged, right? Privileged that I got to have this position, in a business that is booming, right? It was a need. Until today, it's still a need. Many clients still looking for our kind of services. So I would say I was quite privileged that our business was in that. And when I saw that, and that's when I really changed my whole perspective. I really changed my whole perspective and went all in to really educate myself and get up to speed in terms on the knowledge and of course try and build up my business development skills, which is that's something that I was never really good at. Like, that's not my nature. I've never been someone who's outgoing, really hardcore sales, business development, but that's something that I have built and grown over the years. Once I realized that.
I think it's thanks for sharing and opening up on that side, right? I think but just touching on the point, like, I think no one is good at sales or something. There's no one way to do it, right? I think in this podcast, I think I covered with Adrian, like, okay, everyone is a seller to some aspect. Whether you're an engineer on the back end, you need to sell your ideas, the technical architecture, this kind of stuff. All this requires like some sort of influencing, right?
Correct.
As a human being on earth, everyone is a seller. So just get up. But I think I really, so if Evan, you really got your fulfillment, because like I think it's also due to your personality. I think we've known each other for so long, right? Like, you're someone like that is adaptable. You're really open to a lot of different new things. And okay, in the beginning you felt super lost. Okay, cybersecurity, is that a niche that you wanted and you felt lost? But it's because of the different people that have sort of willing to invest and open up your perspective on that. And then you did feel like, hey, this market is booming and you're actually in the right position. How come then I think you sort of have that internal fire or excitement that made
that light bulb moment. Light bulb moment.
But it's also because like your nature is adaptable. You, like what you mentioned from young, I want to be businessman lah. I think I sort of like that lah. Like, don't really have like an idea that what I want to do clearly lah. But really,
I think nobody really knows lah. I think nobody really knows.
I think half. I would say 60% of people don't really know exactly what they want. It's very tough. Like, even if you ask now or you ask our parents, okay, but there are 20 or like 30, 40% of people that really know what they really want from the beginning. And my dad is like one of them. He knew that he wanted to like help people, and being a doctor is just what he wanted. And from that on, from young, that's what he worked towards, to break a lot of barriers to get to where he is. And I really admire people like that. But I would say like majority of people,
there's probably just as many that don't.
Exactly.
Even if they think they know what they want to do, they probably don't.
So I think
it's just like how I always thought I wanted to be an engineer, or like learn to be an engineer, and then when I actually get there, it's like not really.
Yeah. So
You know,
it's
yeah.
interesting, right? That's what
Yeah.
makes this world so complex, so exciting. There's a lot of different roles that you can do.
Yeah.
It's really how you open yourself, and then just so happen like
Yeah.
you guys, have the privilege. Okay, you guys have the options to grow, take the business to the next level.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's, I think we can touch a bit more on, like what was growing up in a, your parents were like having their own business and stuff. Like I'm sure that has some influence to making you more attached. Like when you go, like for example, if they have this kind of talk to you, then you feel more attached to it, right? Yeah. So, how did that kind of upbringing, like so far from your sharing, it's not like in your face, like you need to join the family business. It's very like they're like passive, like
Subtle.
planting the seed.
Yeah, very
seeds and
subtle.
everything. Deep
Yeah,
down inside,
yeah.
of course, they know like they would love.
I think
But
it's
then,
for sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
no, go for
but
it,
like
go for
it's just for our cases I think it's been quite like passive kind of thing. But I think certainly there will be some families out there that are more adamant, or like
Yeah.
kid, you have to continue, but for our case I think maybe not so much. But yeah, like I mean, like you talked about fulfillment earlier, and I mean, yes, I growing up I knew that they had a family business. It was in engineering, and during my engineering degree, I realized that engineering wasn't really for me. So I never really had a passion for the nature of the business itself, i.e., manufacturing or engineering. But it was throughout that process, from uni to doing Twitch and YouTube, and working for a short while, about 1.5 years in Daikin, in HVAC industry. That it was in that process that I sort of slowly found what I'm a little bit more passionate about, at least in terms of the work that I want to do, And so while yes, I'm now in my family business, but to my dad's disappointment, I'm not exactly in the really like the really technical and engineering part of it. But during that process of I would say soul searching, in uni and my YouTube career and Daikin, I learned that like I'm more leaning towards like the management side of things. I like to see how business operates, what drives change, what sort of things you can innovate on, what things can be improved on, which led to me being at least a little bit more willing to, help out in the family business. It's not so much for the business per se, but it's more to just help my family, my parents out. They are also getting older every day. Just sort of, like you say, fulfill kind of like my duties as like a son.
Yeah,
I
filial
think
piety, right?
I think in
it's like-
Asian countries and
Yeah.
families, it's
Yeah.
quite,
It's a
it's
very
a thing
big
lah.
thing.
It's a thing
Yeah.
lah.
It's
you
a
know,
thing, yeah.
compared to maybe more Western-oriented families. And so, slowly I had to find my place, I suppose, or like what at least I would feel like I want to do. Yeah.
And I think I just wanted to just summarize on one topic before we move on to the second part, right? Because now we're like almost like half an hour in already. So I just wanted to, from each of you, right? What's, because you already went through this process and then now you already sort of found your place, found your niche in there. But if for those people that, working for a few years, or people that are, still studying and not very clear on what they actually want out of life, right? What was something that really helped you, find your aha moment or light bulb moment that you felt like there's of course a lot of different things, but what's that one thing that, helped you to help with that soul searching or even get to that light bulb moment?
I think I'll go first. And I think for this, if you are, and I would say privileged enough lah, because of course there are certain, amount of people in the world that maybe would not have this privilege. So I would say we are quite blessed, and thankful that we are afforded that privilege to just try out new things lah. Just keep trying new things. Like I literally went from engineering to doing gaming videos to working in back in the time, it was more like a small sales company.
Okay.
So, it needed some engineering knowledge, some technical knowledge, because I'm trying to sell,
Air conditioning units.
air
and
conditioning,
stuff.
actually more for like malls, hospitals, those kind of big chiller systems and things like that. But it was more of a sales company, and it was a small, sort of say startup. It was still less than 3-4 years old. And so during the time, like, I mean, you see a lot of different things lah, and gives you a lot of different perspectives, and lets you more easily find what you are looking to do.
So it's like the shotgun method, right? You sort of like try as many different things
I think
within your capacity that you think you might be interested in, and then you try and pick up things that you like and or sort of like hit you.
I think you never really know what you want to do until you have experienced it or done it lah.
Okay. And what about you, Evan?
I totally agree, actually.
Okay.
That's pretty much, I was going to say the same thing. Just trying out as many things as possible. Something new, going out of your comfort zone. It's not going to be easy, but
especially going out, like people talk a lot about, it's like people like talk about going out, stepping out of comfort zone, doing things, growth mindset. It's actually easier said than done, right?
Yeah,
easier
correct.
said than done.
Correct. It is easier said than done, but I would say doing that is one of the most important things. And just something to add as well, I think talking to different people of different experiences, I think that also can really help you sort of shape your thinking or help you.
Everyone walks a different path.
Correct.
Right?
That will sort of give you sort of a third party experience.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing the podcast. I'm really gaining a lot of insights from the conversation. And I think with that, let's wrap up this part one of, how you guys embark yourself and your thought process, the framework that you guys have took on to get into the business. Yeah, really appreciate your time, Evan and Han Jun. First time we're doing 2 guests at once. And with that, if you guys found it helpful, if your parents listening, you have a family business, just some hopefully it was a meaningful conversation, insights. Couldn't get too deep in the details, but I think that's about what we're going to cover in part 1. So with that, thank you so much, Han Jun,
Thank you.
Evan.
Thanks,
Stay
Wenjie.
tuned to second part. All right, see you. Peace out.